guys, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate. We are Real Estate Elevated, and we are back for part 2 with Nick Hobbs with Alcova Mortgage. We're picking up right where we left off. Nick, thank you for coming back for the second piece.
Glad to be here. Excited to get into it.
Yeah, just so much to talk about, guys. So we had to split this into 2 episodes. So thank you for joining us for part 2. We hope it's just as exciting as part 1. So it sounds like there's multiple opportunities for success here and multiple opportunities to build wealth. And that's kind of the moral of the story, guys. Between what Nick is saying and what I'm saying, investing in real estate can get you really far ahead. And especially starting in your 20s, like I know that I don't look it, but I am in my 30s and thinking about all the things I could have invested in my early 20s that now would be hitting that 10-year mark and then some. And what real estate would have looked like 10 years ago versus now, especially in this location. I mean, it's just astronomical on the back end, what can be gained. So let's kind of talk for a few minutes here just about the fact that the education piece. So people often see, okay, if I do it now, then 10 years from now, I'm going to be set up. But they wait for that go moment until they find the right thing. And oftentimes there's stuff that can actually prevent them from getting to jump into the deep end, like things that could be affecting their credit score.
Yeah, well, there's that, but there's also the house itself. Let's talk briefly, before we get into that, let's talk about the house itself. A lot of people have these criteria of things I want out of my perfect home, right? Forget all that. That's your second home. Make your second home your favorite home. Make your first home, only think about it through one lens. This is going to be my future investment property. That's my stance. That's my opinion. Your first home, you should try to keep it. Just make sure that first home has rentability. Make sure that it has some parking. Make sure it's in a good area. Make sure if you have to spend a little bit more to get a house in a good area, this will set you up to have a long-term investment that is so much better.
Well, yeah, because we know that it's 5 to 7 years average in every home. And it doesn't matter what stage of life we're talking about. That tends to be the average, even though I have a lot of first-time home buyers that tend to tell me we're looking for our forever home. But you think about how many things can happen in your entire lifetime, right? Between job changes and shifts, family dynamic changes, or even not your immediate family, but your extended family. Something might happen that would pull you to a different location. So obviously taking advantage of that is important.
If the first thing holding you back is that you can't get the house that you want, just try to put that out of your mind. Your first house is an investment. It's not going to be your dream home, or it could be. You'd be very lucky. But I would suggest making it an investment and thinking about it through that lens and not waiting for the perfect picket fence house that's in the perfect area that you'd want to live in super long term. Like you just said. Okay, but back to the other buyer hesitation reasons, the things that get in your way. There's 3 things that go into a loan: income, assets, and credit. And those are the 3 things that usually hold somebody back a bit. And you want to talk about that right now?
Oh, yeah. Go for
Okay,
it.
let's talk about credit. If your credit is over 640, you can definitely get a house. And if it's under 640, you just need to get your credit scores up. It's usually not that hard to do. And you do not need to pay. Most people do not need to pay a credit repair service to help them. They just need to talk to somebody who knows enough about it to tell them what to do. A lot of realtors that I know enough about credit to tell you what to do. I definitely do. I've been helping people fix their credit for free for a decade now. If you call me, I will tell you what you need to do to fix your credit. All I have to do is ask you about 3 minutes of rapid fire questions, and I can put together a plan of exactly what you should do. You've still got to do the work, pay down the cards, dispute the collections, do whatever you have to do, but I can tell you what you should do. For example, I'll give you my 2 favorite pieces of credit advice that apply to almost everybody. Number 1, the collection that hurts you the worst is the most recent one. So if you're paying a credit repair company to get rid of one from 5 years ago, but you have one from 1 year ago, you shouldn't be paying them to do that if you're trying to get your scores up. Focus on the most recent one. That's what's going to help your scores the most. And my second favorite piece of credit advice is get added to somebody else's card as an authorized user. Just make sure that card has a low balance, a perfect payment history, been around for a while, and you could go from having no credit to having 800 scores in 1 month. That's an amazing cheat code to get good credit quickly, is to get on somebody else's train. It's not going to hurt their scores at all for you to be added to their card. It's a one-way street of benefit. It's also a one-way street of harm if they have a late payment on that card. So, talk to somebody who has good responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of responsibility, a lot of times I've heard people, they didn't know that there was something that was harming their credit until they finally talked to their lender. And unfortunately, that typically ends up being when they're ready to buy a house. And now they can't buy that house because the stars are not aligning anymore. They should have done the back end work.
I'm the last person that anyone wants to talk to because I'm asking people for documents and that's annoying. And I'm looking closely at their documents and that could be scary. Or they think, oh, I don't want to talk to a lender because I'm not going to get approved. That's fine. I never tell people no. I tell people not yet, and here's what you have to do. It shouldn't be a scary conversation. If I had it my way, I would talk to every single client that I ever work with at least a year before it's time for them to buy a house. So I could say, listen, you could qualify for this loan right now, but if you can save up this much money, if you can get your credit scores to here, this is going to be cheaper. Your interest rate's going to be lower. We're going to get you a better loan in a better area, and all these things we can get in line with more time to plan. I do not mind talking to you 2 years before you buy a house. I've had clients I've talked to for like 6-7 years before they buy a house. We get to know each other. We build some trust there. There's a lot of planning that can happen in that time. It's talk to me, talk to a lender, not at the last minute. That is what happens. You end up with a higher interest rate or a worse loan because you didn't have time to plan. Or you're ready to go. You're coming up to the end of your lease. It's time, and you don't qualify. And now you're re-signing a lease. You're going month to month and paying more for it. So if it comes to credit, then talk to a lender sooner than later.
Well, and I think you tapped into as well with the lease opportunity is a couple of things when it comes to a lease. Number one, you need to know what your lease break agreement is. Like how many days out do you have to give them a heads up? Do you automatically renew? Do you go to a month to month?
Does your rent taken over?
Yeah. Can you get it taken over or sublet, or do you have to buy it out? Yeah. Also, if you do end up going to the month to month, does it increase the rent rate? Because sometimes it's actually going to be an adverse effect by going to that rate in comparison to your mortgage. So lots of things to think about.
So that's credit. The next one's income. Consider a cosigner. If income is what's holding you back and you're like, oh man, I'm only making 50 grand right now and I don't think I can afford the house I want. I want to do what you say. I want a house in a good area that has rentability, but I just can't qualify for it right now. Consider asking family primarily. First ask your family. Ask your family if they will co-sign for you on a loan. When you ask someone to, if you were to co-sign for somebody, this doesn't have to be a forever thing. Let's say that I need help qualifying for a house and I get my dad to co-sign for me. Let's say that a year after I get my house, my income is higher. Well, then I would just refinance the loan into my name at that point. Let's say I get married and I have 2 incomes. Well, then I would refinance dad off the loan and put her on the loan. And voila, I can afford this house on my own. Mm-hmm. Having somebody co-sign for you does not have to be a long-term commitment. It can be just until you have enough income to support the loan on your own, which usually isn't that long of a wait. Mm-hmm. At least for a lot of young people who are, getting started in life.
Or people who get into a career that is, historically not going to pay a whole lot. I think about how many former teachers I work with that are at a cap. This is a perfect opportunity for them where they do feel like there's kind of a ceiling and they can't get to that income level to be able to buy what they're looking for.
Then don't be a permanent member of the renter class because your income is not high enough. Work with your family, and if you don't have the family to work with, you don't have a partner that you could work with. I co-signed for my ex-girlfriend. I know that she's going to refinance me off of that loan at some point. It didn't matter to me if we were going to work out long term. I do say go with family first, but if there's a best friend or a partner that could go in with you on a house, call it a joint investment. We see young single mothers going in on houses together sometimes. They understand the numbers. They understand inflation. They understand that the rent keeps going up. If they just buy a house, that payment is going to, for the most part, stay the same, aside from your taxes and your insurance going up a little bit every year. We see friends going in on houses. We see groups of friends going in on houses. Work with your community, work with your family, work with your friends, work with your partner. Think about it as an investment, but don't keep renting. I will talk to people all the time who've been renting for 10 years. They're 30, they're 40 sometimes. They've been renting for 20 years, and they don't even want to hear how much equity they would have if they'd bought a house back in 2010. They don't even want to hear it. They're like, listen, just don't tell me. I don't want to know. Yeah. So that's income. Those are some solutions to not having enough income to support the kind of loan that you want or the house that you want. And the last one would be assets. And we touched on this briefly when I talked about down payment assistance in USDA. But the last point I would make on that is, again, consider asking your family for help. These are people that supposedly they love you and they want to help you. My grandparents love me. My parents At least one of them loves me, and and they definitely want to help me, and it is far more often that I hear that people are unwilling to ask their family for help than I hear that they asked their family and their family said no. That's actually rare. That's rare that your family says no. Really, the barrier, because I'm trying to convince people to do this, the first barrier that I run into is the hesitation, the embarrassment of asking for help in the first place. Or people just say, I just don't know if they'll say yes. Well, find out, because this is one of the most important financial decisions you'll ever make. Find out, ask. And sometimes people say, I don't know if my family will trust me. I don't know if they'd want to co-sign for me.
Yeah.
And to that I say, earn their trust. The reason that they may not trust you is that you have no money and you have a pretty solid history of not being able to save money, and maybe you have made some poor financial decisions in the past. Do you think that I ask them, do you think that that family member would be more likely to help you qualify with their added income if you were to save up $10,000? Can you increase your savings? Could you work nights? Could you do Uber Eats in the evenings? Could you do something, save up some money, show some drive, show some motivation, show some personal responsibility? Do you really think that your family member, wouldn't trust you at that point? If you could show them how hard you've been working and show them the plan, I'm going to rent out a few rooms that's going to pay for my whole mortgage. At the very least, the logical argument would be that it would increase their confidence in you. So these are just the kinds of strategies that I encourage people to play with, to consider, to push for in life, and as young as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, guys, I think the moral of the story here is there are so many different opportunities to build wealth. And this is something that I think is a daunting kind of task to a lot of people. They don't know what the steps are. They feel like it's too great to ask, or they just don't know where the starting point is. So obviously, Nick is a great wealth of knowledge to help you build wealth. I mean, let's kind of connect the dots here. Yeah. So I'm actually going to put the details on how to contact him, to reach out to him, to use all of this trust of statistical data to help you move forward. We'll put that in the bottom in the details of this episode so you can connect with him. Feel free to drop some comments and questions down below. We would love to ask and answer to all of you guys. Again, I am Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we will catch you guys on the next episode. All right, y'all, thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like, share, and follow us on Instagram as well as YouTube. We're also on Apple Podcasts. Again, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate.